My name is Daniel Brooks. I'm 48 years old, and I live in Columbus, Ohio. 6 years ago, my life changed in a way I never imagined. But the hardest part wasn't losing my wife. The hardest part was discovering that the woman I trusted to protect my son had become the person he was most afraid of. My first wife, Rachel, and I had been married for almost 15 years. We had one son, Noah, who was only 9 years old when our lives fell apart. Rachel was an incredible mother. Noah was attached to her in a way I had never seen before. Wherever Rachel went, Noah followed. Then a dangerous pandemic swept through our city. Rachel became sick. For days, we refused to give up hope. I drove her to the hospital, spoke to doctors, and kept telling Noah that his mother would come home soon. But one night, I received a call from the hospital. "Daniel, I'm so sorry." Those few words destroyed my world. Rachel was gone. Noah was 9 years old, and he never even got the chance to say goodbye to his mother. After that, our lives became a struggle. I worked as a project supervisor for a construction company. I had to leave home early every morning, and sometimes I didn't return until late at night. Noah was often alone. I tried hiring babysitters and asking neighbors for help, but nothing worked consistently. Sometimes my job required me to travel to another work site with almost no warning. Noah became quieter every day. One night I came home and found him sitting on the couch, staring at an old picture of his mother. I sat beside him. "Buddy, what's wrong?" He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Dad, I miss Mom." I pulled him into my arms. "I miss her too, son." That night I realized something. I couldn't keep living like this forever. A few months later, I met Lauren Mitchell. Lauren seemed kind, patient, and understanding. She knew I was a widower and that Noah was my entire world. At first, she treated Noah wonderfully. She helped him with his homework, cooked his favorite meals, and sometimes drove him to school. Noah slowly began trusting her. One evening, he looked at me and said, "Dad, Lauren is nice." Those words gave me hope. I thought maybe our broken family could finally become whole again. Eventually, Lauren and I got married. For the first few weeks, everything seemed perfect. Then, little things began to change. Whenever I was home, Lauren treated Noah like he was her own son. "Hey, Noah, dinner's ready. How was school? Do you need help with your homework?" But whenever I had to leave for work, Noah's behavior became strangely different. One morning, I asked him, "Everything okay?" He hesitated. Then he forced a smile. "Yeah, Dad, I'm fine." But his eyes told me something was wrong. One afternoon, I came home earlier than I expected. When I walked through the door, Lauren and Noah were standing in the kitchen. Lauren immediately smiled. "Daniel, you're home early." Noah stood silently beside her. I looked closely at his face. He seemed frightened. "Noah, are you okay?" He nodded. "Yes, Dad." Lauren quickly interrupted. "He's fine. I was just getting him ready for dinner." I said nothing, but that was the first moment I truly became suspicious. Over the next few days, I noticed Noah crying quietly more than once. Every time I asked him what was wrong, he said nothing. Finally, one night, I knocked on his bedroom door. "Noah?" There was no answer. I opened the door and found him sitting on his bed. I sat beside him. "Son, you can tell me anything." He looked at me with tears in his eyes. He was about to speak when we suddenly heard Lauren's voice outside the room. "Noah?" The change in his expression was immediate. He stopped talking. And that's when I realized something terrifying. My son wasn't afraid to tell me the truth. He was afraid of what would happen if Lauren heard him. That night, I couldn't sleep. One question kept running through my mind. What happens to my son when I'm not home? The next morning, I made a decision I never thought I would have to make. I installed small security cameras around the house. I didn't tell Lauren, and I didn't tell Noah. I just wanted the truth. For 2 days, I saw nothing unusual. Then, on the third day, my phone received an alert. I opened the live recording. Lauren was standing in the kitchen. Noah had just returned from school. Lauren closed the door and looked directly at him. "Your father isn't home, right?" Noah quietly answered, "No." Lauren's entire expression changed. She grabbed his backpack and threw it onto the counter. Then she leaned toward him. "You better learn to obey me," she said coldly, "because your father will never believe you." I froze. I replayed the recording, again and again. My hands were shaking. I had no idea what I was going to do next, but I knew one thing. That recording was only the beginning, because what I saw in the next video would reveal a secret about my second wife, my late wife, and my own family that I could never have imagined. I stared at my phone for several minutes, unable to process what I had just seen. The woman I had married, the woman I trusted around my son, was treating Noah in a way I never imagined. I opened the next recording. Lauren had Noah sitting at the kitchen table. She stood in front of him with her arms crossed. "You're not going to tell your father anything," she said. "If you do, things will get much worse for you." Noah's eyes filled with tears. "What did I do?" Lauren leaned closer. "Your biggest mistake is thinking your father cares about you more than he cares about me." My heart broke. I stopped the recording. For the next 2 days, I watched everything the cameras captured. Every video showed the same pattern. Whenever I was home, Lauren acted like a loving stepmother. The moment I left, her entire personality changed. She yelled at Noah over little things, forced him to do chores, and constantly warned him never to tell me what happened. But there was one thing she kept saying that disturbed me more than anything else. "Your father will always choose me." That sentence haunted me. I had never given Noah a reason to believe he was less important to me than anyone else. After Rachel died, Noah was the only reason I had kept moving forward. One night, I quietly walked into his bedroom while he was sleeping. I sat beside him and looked at his face. For the first time, I realized how badly I had failed him. I had been so focused on working, paying bills, and keeping our lives together that I had ignored the signs right in front of me. The next morning, I called my longtime friend, Mark Reynolds, an attorney. I showed him the recordings. He watched them carefully. When the videos ended, he looked at me. "Daniel, don't confront Lauren yet." "Why?" "Because you need to preserve everything. If this becomes a legal matter, you'll need evidence." I agreed. That afternoon, I deliberately told Lauren that I might be working late. "I'll probably be home after 10. Lauren smiled. "Don't worry, I'll take care of Noah." There was something about her smile that made my stomach tighten. I left the house, but instead of going to work, I parked several blocks away and opened the camera feed on my phone. A few minutes later, Lauren called Noah into the kitchen. My heart started racing. She placed an envelope on the table. Noah looked at it. "What's that?" Lauren answered, "Something that belongs to your father." Noah reached for the envelope, but Lauren quickly pulled it away. "Not yet." I immediately called Mark. "Something is wrong. She has something that belongs to me." Mark's voice became serious. "Don't go inside yet." I stayed where I was. About an hour later, Lauren left the house. She drove to a small cafe across town. I didn't follow her. Instead, I wrote down her license plate and sent the information to Mark. About an hour later, Lauren returned home. She went directly to Noah's bedroom. I opened the camera feed. This time, she was holding an old photograph. The moment Noah saw it, his face went pale. Lauren placed the photograph in front of him. "Now, do you understand why I came here?" Noah shook his head. "No." Lauren stared at him. "Your father never told you what really happened before your mother died." My entire body went cold. Rachel, why was Lauren talking about my late wife? I turned the volume up. "No, what do you know about my mom?" Lauren remained silent for several seconds. Then she said something that changed everything. "Your mother didn't die only because of the illness." I stopped breathing. I immediately paused the recording. That was impossible. The doctors had told me Rachel died from complications caused by the pandemic illness. So what was Lauren talking about? I called Mark again. "I need you to investigate Lauren." He was silent for a moment. "Are you sure?" "No," I said, "but I don't trust her anymore." The next day, Mark sent me a report.
I opened it on my laptop. Page after page revealed details about Lauren's past. Then I saw something that made my blood run cold. Lauren Mitchell wasn't her real name. She had lived under another name years earlier. But that wasn't the worst part. Her past had a connection to Rachel, a connection I had never known about. I closed the file and stared at the wall. Suddenly, everything began to make sense. Lauren hadn't entered my life by accident, but I still didn't know why. That evening, I went into Noah's room. He was sitting quietly on his bed. I sat beside him. "Son, I need you to tell me something." He looked nervous. "What? What did Lauren tell you about your mother?" He lowered his eyes. Then he whispered, "She said Mom left something for me before she died." My heart stopped. "What did she leave?" Noah looked at me. "I don't know." "Why?" "She said only you would know where it was." I stared at my son. Then an old memory suddenly came back to me. A few days before Rachel died, she had held my hand from her hospital bed. Her voice had been weak. "Daniel, if anything happens to me, promise me you'll protect Noah." At the time, I thought she was simply afraid of dying. Now, I wondered if she had been trying to warn me. That night, I searched through every old box, drawer, and closet in our house. And then, behind an old storage cabinet, I found something I hadn't seen in years. A small wooden box. Rachel's name was written on the top. My hands began to shake. I opened it. Inside was a USB drive, several documents, and a sealed letter. The letter had only one sentence written across the front. "Daniel, if you're reading this, please believe our son." I stared at those words, and suddenly I realized something terrifying. Rachel may have known exactly who Lauren was, and whatever she had left behind could finally reveal the truth.
I stared at the envelope for several seconds before opening it. My hands were shaking. The words on the front still echoed in my mind. "Daniel, if you're reading this, please believe our son." I carefully opened the letter. Rachel had written it during the final days of her illness. She explained that shortly before she became seriously sick, she had discovered something disturbing about a woman named Lauren. Rachel had seen her before. She believed Lauren had been asking questions about our family, our finances, and especially Noah. But Rachel never had enough evidence to understand what Lauren really wanted. Then Rachel wrote something that made my heart stop. "If anything happens to me, don't let anyone separate you from Noah." I wiped the tears from my eyes. For years, I had believed Rachel's death was simply a terrible tragedy caused by the pandemic. Now I wondered if there had been something more behind it. Inside the box was also a USB drive. I gave it to Mark, my attorney. He examined everything carefully and helped me preserve the evidence. The files on the drive contained copies of documents Rachel had collected before she became sick. They revealed that Lauren had been using a different name several years earlier. She had been connected to a financial scheme involving people Rachel had known through her work. Suddenly, Lauren's strange behavior made sense. She hadn't married me because she loved me. She believed Rachel had hidden evidence somewhere in our home, and she thought Noah might know where it was. That explained everything: the threats, the questions, the envelope, the way Lauren treated Noah whenever I wasn't home. She wasn't trying to become his mother. She was trying to get information from him. I called Mark. "We have enough," I said. He agreed. But before we contacted the police, I needed to protect Noah. That evening, I sat beside him on his bed. "Son, I need you to listen to me carefully." He looked frightened. "Are you mad at me?" I pulled him into my arms. "Never. I could never be angry with you for telling me the truth." Noah started crying. Then he whispered, "I was scared you wouldn't believe me." Those words broke my heart. I held him tighter. "I should have listened sooner. I'm sorry." The next morning, I confronted Lauren. She walked into the kitchen and smiled. "Daniel, you're home early." I placed Rachel's letter on the table. Lauren looked at it. The color drained from her face. "Where did you get that?" Rachel left it for me. Lauren stared at me. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I said, "Tell me the truth." She tried to deny everything, but when I placed the camera recordings on the table, her story began falling apart. Finally, Lauren admitted she had married me because she believed Rachel had hidden valuable evidence connected to the financial scheme. She believed I would never suspect her. She thought Noah would eventually tell her where the evidence was. But she had been wrong. I had already contacted the authorities. Within minutes, police officers arrived at the house. Lauren was arrested. The evidence from the cameras, Rachel's documents, and the information Mark had uncovered became part of the investigation. For the first time in months, my home was quiet. But I wasn't celebrating. I went straight to Noah's bedroom. He was sitting on his bed. I knelt in front of him. "It's over, son." He looked at me. "Is she leaving?" "Yes." I threw his arms around me. I held him tightly and closed my eyes. For the first time since Rachel's death, I felt like I had finally kept the promise I made to her. In the months that followed, I changed my life. I reduced my work hours and made sure Noah was never left feeling alone again. We spent weekends together. We went to baseball games, took road trips, and sometimes just sat in the backyard talking about his mother. Noah slowly became himself again. Years later, when he was older, he came to me one evening holding an old photograph of Rachel. He turned it over and handed it to me. "Dad, look." On the back was a message I had never seen before. It said, "Thank you for choosing our son." I couldn't hold back my tears. I realized then that I hadn't simply protected Noah from a cruel stepmother. I had kept the last promise I ever made to the woman I loved. Rachel was gone, but her love for our son had never disappeared. And Noah taught me something I will never forget. Children don't always tell you when they're hurting. Sometimes their silence is the loudest cry for help. If I had ignored my son's silence for even a little longer, I might have lost the one person I had left in this world. That experience changed me forever. Today, when I look at Noah, I don't see the little boy who lost his mother. I see the young man who survived something that no child should ever have to experience. And every time he calls me Dad, I remember the promise I made years ago. I would protect him no matter what.